The idea that history happened everywhere except in Britain is a modern misconception. Britain has a long and glorious history, but for most of it, it was all happening somewhere else. Rome wasn't built in a day, but in about 700 years, it would change the world. Still, when Romulus and Remus set out to found their new city, they didn't know any of that. All they knew was the story of how they got there. Long ago, before maps drew the lines of nations, before cities echoed with names known across the world, there was only darkness. Amulius won a swift and brutal victory, crushing the rebellion and sowing terror for the next 3 decades. And Rhea Silvia remained unwed. If either had a son, Amulius's rule would end. The question wasn't if it would happen, but when. And Amulius decided he wouldn't wait to find out. Yet for all his might, a shadow hung over Amulius's reign. And every night that same shadow grew darker. But through it all, something else burned inside her, a fire that fed on fear and doubt and whispered prophecy. One day, her children would avenge their father. One day, they would bring the tyrant to justice. And soon, he started looking for heirs of his own. Romulus killed Tatius and fled. Exhausted and afraid, he made his way to the river Tiber, where legend says a she-wolf came down to drink. They excelled in everything: hunting, swordplay, horsemanship. But always they dreamed of ending their uncle's reign and avenging their father. Seeing the exhausted young man, she licked his wounds and took him to her lair. When Amulius heard what had happened, he ordered the she-wolf hunted and Romulus raised in secrecy. He offered Rhea Silvia's hand to his best warrior, the giant Tatius. And when the nearby Etruscans threatened to invade, he led them into battle, winning Rome its first great victory. After that, Rome never looked back. It conquered all of Italy, then North Africa, Western Europe, even Egypt. Its armies marched on Constantinople and Carthage, crushed revolts in Spain and Dacia. And all the while, the Roman Senate grew more and more powerful until it controlled most of the known world. And together they raised twin boys, Romulus and Remus, in separate households. They were rivals. They were playthings. See, when Romulus founded Rome, he did something crazy. He abducted 100 women from neighboring Sabine villages and forced them to become wives and slaves. And it all started with a baby, abandoned in the forest, raised by a wolf and destined for greatness. Now that doesn't sound very nice, but the reason he did it was simple. He wanted to start a family. First, they freed their grandfather, Numitor, from exile and returned him to power. That's why it's so important to understand their story and how it shaped our world. Instead, they called together all the people of Latium and proclaimed Numitor king. You see, when Romulus founded Rome, he set about making it the greatest city in the world. He built temples to every god, palaces for senators, baths and aqueducts, roads and marketplaces. He invited kings and commoners from all over Italy to live in Rome, granting them citizenship and inviting them to join the Roman Senate. And in just a few generations, Rome became the most powerful city in central Italy. But in return, he granted them a gift of land on which they could settle and raise their own families, setting aside 7 hills as property of the gods. And there, in the middle of those 7 hills, Romulus killed Remus, claiming the whole hill of Palatine as his own. There, under the watchful eyes of the gods, Rome was born. Then they took arms against their uncle Amulius, driving him and his men into the fields. A great battle followed, but in the end the twins prevailed. Amulius was dead and his soldiers scattered. They were groomed for glory, but they never knew each other. And to prepare them for that day, Rhea Silvia brought them up in secret, training them to be fierce and strong. And in that darkness there was a whisper. Rome was not yet stone or sword. It was a secret, a destiny, a prophecy waiting to unfold. Marry one of my warriors and I will name your son Prince. She explained how the forest itself had protected her, hiding her from Amulius's men and bringing her safely back to the altar, And that's when she learned she was pregnant. She told them stories of their ancestors, of the Trojans and the Greeks, and the wars they fought. And every night before sleep pulled them under, she told them of the day when they would rise up and free their people. Refuse and I will send you to serve Vesta, goddess of the hearth, taking no husband, having no children. And though the choice was his, there was really no choice at all. So Rhea Silvia agreed to wed. But the night before her marriage, she fled into the forest and collapsed before the altar of Vesta, begging for protection. Amulius's men searched for her, that the goddess of the hearth was a mysterious one, and they found nothing but empty leaves and a wolf's den. In the central lands of what we now call Italy, nestled among rolling hills and silent woods, stood a city, Alba Longa. They dragged the old king away, stripped him of his crown jewels, and cast him out into the fields to die. Then Amulius took Rhea Silvia back to Alba Longa, declared himself king, and spread a net of fear throughout the land. Whoever dared defy him would feel the wrath of the twins. You see, before banishing Numitor, Amulius had taken Rhea Silvia into his own household, promising her marriage to a warrior of her choosing, and in doing so, he bound her to him by blood and oath. Any rebellion would mean betraying family. That was the gamble. But to his subjects, it seemed more like tyranny. This ancient place had been founded by the descendants of Aeneas, the Trojan hero who escaped a burning city to follow the gods' call westward. He settled here, and from his divine bloodline, heroes and kings arose. Most famous of these was Numitor, a wise and noble ruler who kept his people safe and prosperous. His counselors claimed descent from Neptune, Mars, and Vulcan. His soldiers carried spears tipped with the heads of wolves and eagles, and his kingship was blessed by the gods themselves. But even in the best of times, a king's life is fraught with peril. You see, Numitor had only one child, a daughter, Rhea Silvia, and to ensure that the throne would pass to her, he'd recently stepped down, naming her heir presumptive. By tradition, she was to marry a neighboring king upon her father's death, and at present that meant returning to her uncle, Amulius, king of Alba Longa. Now, Amulius had always resented his brother's greater fame and fortune. Even as a boy, he'd seethed over how everyone praised Numitor's courage and strength while he was overlooked. And that resentment only grew until it became envy, until one cold night it consumed him entirely. Soldiers loyal to Amulius stormed the palace where Numitor lived. And sure enough, soon after Numitor's exile, a band of rebels attacked Alba Longa. You see, his nephew, Numitor, was still out there, living in the forest, raising an army. One night, he summoned Rhea Silvia before him and issued an ultimatum. Then, just as suddenly as she disappeared, Rhea Silvia reappeared. Now, you may think she must have been scared, and she was. You may think she must have despaired, and she did. She sent them out into the forest to hunt, teaching them how to track prey and strike true. Meanwhile, Amulius grew older. Fearsome as he was, he too could not escape the slow march of time. Still, fate had plans for them, because one evening when Romulus visited his father, the two got into a fight. Years passed and the twins grew older, inheriting their father's looks and their mother's spirit. And finally, when they were old enough, they made their move. Rome was free. However, the twins knew better than to declare themselves king and queen. Now, you may think their story ended right there, and it kind of did. But let me tell you why they're still important today. Romulus even started Rome's first military force, a group of 300 patrician volunteers. But the craziest part of Rome's story isn't that it became so big or so powerful. It's that Romulus's descendants ruled over everything. And thanks to him, the descendants of Romulus became emperors, popes, saints, and kings, ruling over nearly half the human race for centuries to come. Today, Rome is just another city in Italy, but once it was the center of the world, the beating heart of a global empire. If you enjoyed this episode, check out this playlist for more videos like it. Thanks for watching. Amulius, king of Alba Longa, paced his palace in unrest. It was dawn, yet darkness lingered in his heart. For news had reached him on wings of the morning breeze, news that shattered the fragile peace of his reign. A tale of two brothers, Romulus and Remus, whose story is woven into the very fabric of Rome. In the hush of the early morning, before the sun had thought to rise, and the world was veiled in the soft embrace of twilight, Amulius summoned his guards, their faces grim and stoic, their loyalty to him absolute. The river Tiber, usually a lively artery of the city, was uncharacteristically still that morning. Moved by the plight of the abandoned twins, he wove a spell. With a wave of his divine power, he hushed the birds, stilled the winds, and commanded the waters of the Tiber to rise. The river obeyed, becoming a conduit of fate, guiding the basket to safety. She slipped inside and curled her body around the twins, shielding them with her warmth. Her heart, once hardened by the rigors of the wild, softened at the feel of the tiny bodies against her. Romulus, the elder by a few minutes, was bold and adventurous, always eager to explore the world beyond the fig tree. Remus, the quieter twin, found solace in the wisdom of the forest, learning the language of birds, the whispers of the trees, and the secrets held within ancient stones. In that moment, the wolf, once a symbol of untamed nature, became a mother, a guardian, a protector. With a heavy heart, he remembered the twin brothers he and his wife, Laurentia, had yearned for, prayed for, but never dared to dream they would have. Laurentia, upon seeing Romulus, felt a similar surge of emotion. The years of yearning, the silent prayers, they all found an answer in the young boy standing before her. They would lie beneath the stars at night, gazing at the moon and whispering to each other, "Who are we, really? Why do we feel watched? Why does the future seem so unwritten?" They didn't have the answers then, but the stars, they seemed to know, winking secrets only they could understand. With tears in her eyes, she embraced him, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. In that moment, a profound sense of destiny washed over him. They learned the sounds of the forest, the call of the hills, and the language of the wind. They herded sheep, tended to the crops, and listened to the stories of travelers who passed by. Each day brought new experiences, new challenges, and new joys. She licked the infants not as prey, but as her own, a primal bond of love transcending species and circumstance. No bird sang, no leaves stirred, even the sky, they say, seemed to hold its breath. With a low growl, she nudged them awake, guiding them to her ample breast. They drank, their tiny fists clutching her fur, their innocent eyes closed in bliss. The forest, once a place of danger, transformed into a sanctuary. The rustling leaves sang a lullaby, the birdsong echoed a melody of hope, and the sun, filtering through the canopy, painted dancing patterns on the forest floor. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows that stretched and twisted like grasping claws. From the shadows beneath the fig tree, a pair of glowing eyes emerged. There, amidst the tall trees, stood a humble shepherd named Faustulus tending to his flock. Remus, ever the cautious one, suggested they keep their distance. But Romulus, driven by his insatiable curiosity, couldn't resist. The following day, as Faustulus once again tended to his sheep, Romulus approached him, his steps hesitant, his eyes filled with wonder. Faustulus, startled by the sudden appearance of the young boy, dropped his staff, his gaze widening in surprise. Romulus, sensing the shepherd's apprehension, explained his unusual circumstances, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and hope. Romulus, his curiosity piqued, hid behind a nearby tree, observing the shepherd's simple life. Faustulus, with his weathered face and kind eyes, seemed untouched by the harsh realities of the world. He sang as he worked, his voice blending with the music of the birds, and his laughter echoed the joy of a life lived close to nature. A she-wolf, fierce, agile, and alone, watched the basket with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Her keen senses, honed by years of survival, detected no threat from the infants. Yet her instincts, honed by generations of wildness, urged her to be wary. The wolf circled the basket, her every move fluid, graceful, and then, as if drawn by an invisible force, she sniffed the air, catching the faint scent of milk. Driven by her maternal instincts, she nudged the basket, her ears pricked, listening intently for any sound. And when the only response was the gurgling of the stream, she made a decision. Yet the basket holding the twins remained untouched, suspended in time as if guarded by an unseen hand. The water, instead of drowning out the cries of the infants, swelled around the basket, lifting it gently, cradling it like a cradle. It glided along, not sinking, not turning, as if some divine force was guiding its path. You have heard the news as I have, the twin sons of Mars, a living omen, a challenge to my throne. They must be dealt with swiftly and silently. Let the river Tiber deep. You might ask, gliding along the river's gentle current. The basket finally came to rest beneath the sheltering branches of a wild fig tree at the foot of Palatine Hill. Here, the river's waters, now placid and calm, deposited their precious burden, leaving the basket undisturbed, yet not hidden. For fate, it seemed, had other plans for these abandoned princes, and dark be their tomb. Let it swallow them whole, body and soul. See that it is done. This day shall be without name, without witness, without end. The guards bowed their heads, their silhouettes stark against the pale moonlight, and with that chilling decree, they vanished into the night, disappearing into the maze of shadowed streets, each step echoing the solemn rhythm of their duty. His sister's son, the young shepherd named Mars, had dared to love and been blessed with reward. There, where the water flowed serenely, oblivious to the grim task at hand, they placed the woven basket containing the twin infants. And then, as if to erase all trace of their dreadful deed, they hurried back into the city, leaving behind the basket and its precious cargo to the mercy of the rising tide. Two sons born under the light of a full moon, twin boys who marked a prophecy anew. Emilius ground his teeth, his face ashen and drawn. These twins, these living prophecies, were a threat he could not abide. Their very existence a challenge to his rule, a potential claim to his throne. And so, consumed by fear, he made a decision, a choice as cold and hard as the marble floors beneath his feet. Now, let me tell you a tale of courage, cunning, and the will to survive. As the first rays of sunlight touched the dew-kissed grass, painting the world in hues of gold and green, the guards arrived at the bank of the river Tiber, and now I invite you to close your eyes and picture this. Legend has it that Tiberinus, the river's watchful god, observed the unfolding drama with a mix of sorrow and resolve. Where did the basket go? And now, dear listeners, our tale takes a turn. With gentle pause, she began to move the branches, creating a small opening near the basket. As the hours passed, the she-wolf sensed the hunger of the infants and instinctively knew what to do. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the twins, Romulus and Remus, thrived under the she-wolf's care. One day, as Romulus chased a butterfly deeper into the woods, he stumbled upon a clearing. That evening, as the twins recounted their day's adventures to the she-wolf, Romulus spoke of the shepherd with admiration. Faustulus, his initial shock fading, saw in the boy not just an abandoned child, but a piece of his own lost past. And so, with a mix of trepidation and joy, Faustulus extended a hand to Romulus, welcoming him and secretly Remus as well into their home. As the twins settled into their new life, Romulus and Remus blossomed under the love and care of Faustulus and Laurentia. Yet amidst their newfound happiness, a part of them, perhaps the part that sensed their divine heritage, yearned for more. And so, the tale of Romulus and Remus, the twins who became the founders of Rome, echoes through time, a testament to the enduring power of love, fate, and the unwavering spirit of humanity. Amulius was finished, and Romulus and Remus stood hand in hand atop the Palatine Hill, gazing out across the 7 hills of the newborn Rome. The Tiber River sparkled below, the sun warmed their faces, and all around them, the people celebrated the fall of an evil king and the return of their true bloodline. They were raised by shepherds and lived among the peaceful folk of the hills. They roamed free, climbing trees, wrestling animals, and dreaming big dreams under the fig tree where they were abandoned as infants. But that life was gone. Beside him, Remus fought like a wolf, swift, deadly, and merciless. With each victory, Rome grew stronger. Farms prospered, towns spread, and trade flourished. But soon, the walls of the city reached too far. Her name was Rhea Silvia, and she was destined to bear the twin sons of Mars. But that's a story for another time. What do you think? Do you agree with Remus that Rome was his home and where he belonged? Or do you think he should have followed Romulus to greater things? Let us know in the comments and be sure to subscribe for more. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll see you next time. People from neighboring villages began to complain, and other kings began eyeing Rome hungrily. Romulus and Remus knew they could not fight them all. What they needed was an army. They called the citizens to arms and marched forth, winning battle after battle until every rival king submitted to their rule or died in the attempt. And as they returned home, bearing spoils of war, the people of Rome cheered for their kings. Yet neither Romulus nor Remus basked in the adoration. Their minds were elsewhere. From the tallest tower of the city, Romulus gazed out across the plains of Latium, seeing not fields and farms and hills, but armies and allies and rivals. "We cannot stand here forever," he said to Remus. "Our destiny lies beyond the Tiber. Come with me, and we shall make Rome a power that the world cannot ignore." But Remus shook his head. "Rome is my home," he said, "and this is where I intend to stay." Romulus frowned. Was his brother finally showing signs of weakness? Did the sight of real power make him afraid? He couldn't believe it, but maybe he was wrong. Maybe Remus was more than he thought. Or maybe, just maybe, Remus had chosen the wrong king. Either way, their destinies diverged at this point, and we can go no further without your help. Our first Patreon patrons were revealed last week, and many of you showed your support, so thank you. But we want to bring this show to more people. So if you would like to see exclusive content, please visit our page. You can learn more about how to support us there. Now, the prophecy was fulfilled. Amulius was dead. Remus was holding court in the Forum, and people from all over Italy flocked to see him. He was kind, compassionate, wise, and patient, and he listened to every plea that crossed his lips. Many sought his help against those who wronged them, while others asked for advice on matters of love or business. Throughout it all, Remus listened and judged fairly. At times, Romulus wished he were in his brother's place, but his duty lay in war, and so he stayed at his post. Still, he couldn't help but feel a pang of envy whenever he saw the joy on his brother's face. And that feeling only grew until, one day, he could bear it no longer. He went straight to Remus and laid his heart bare. Remus understood his brother's struggle, and so he offered him a compromise. "You love the thrill of battle. Go to war, win renown and glory. Then return and judge alongside me." Romulus thought for a moment. Was this the end of his conflicts? Was he destined to chase battles for the rest of his life? Well, the idea of settling down didn't appeal to him at all. But his brother had spoken, and Romulus knew better than to refuse Remus's request. He took a deep breath. "So be it," he said. "I shall win you the greatest prize, a queen from a far-off land. She shall bring wealth and power to Rome, and then I shall return and claim my place beside you." And with that, He assembled his men and set out to find the fairest queen in the world. Meanwhile, Remus settled into his kingship. Each day, he presided over trials and settled disputes. He oversaw the building of temples and public works and negotiated treaties with nearby kings. He did everything right, and the people of Rome loved him for it. However, even as prosperity returned to the city, Remus never forgot his humble roots. Every evening, he walked the streets, mingling with his people. Sometimes he was greeted with cheers. Sometimes he was ignored. And sometimes he broke up a fight or helped a woman carry water. It didn't matter to him. These were his people. This was his home. And nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever convince him otherwise. And Romulus and Remus knew, with a certainty that chilled them, that their adventures were far from over. But the brothers said little. Each was lost in thought, for they felt a stirring deep within them, like the wind rising before a storm. Something inside them had changed, and it scared them. And that's where we pick up today's episode of the Roman History Podcast. If you're new here, welcome to the channel, where we cover the history of ancient Rome. This is the 5th episode in our series, covering the legendary origins of Rome. Shepherd Faustulus stepped down from being chief of the village, passing his staff to his son, a young man named Camillus, who ruled wisely and well. Then Romulus and Remus approached their father figure. They wanted to help the people of the hills, but didn't know how. They were still just boys. They weren't ready to rule. But Faustulus smiled knowingly. He led them to a small hill on the edge of town, where the tall trees rustled secrets to the wind. "This is the Lupercal," he said, "and this cave is sacred to the she-wolf. It is here that you were found. Go there every year on the same day. Ask the gods for guidance. You will receive what you seek." The brothers thanked him, but couldn't shake their restlessness. As they reached the cave, a small band of men emerged from the trees. They were led by a man whose face was hard as granite and eyes like chips of ice. "Who are you?" demanded Remus, stepping forward. "I am Tarpius," said the man, "son of King Amulius. You have defeated my father. Next, I will defeat you." Romulus and Remus exchanged glances. Was this the fate that awaited them? Would they spend the rest of their days fighting the sons and grandsons of Amulus? If so, what was the point of defeating the king in the first place? Neither of them wanted to run, but when Tarpius drew a dagger, Remus stepped back instinctively, and that was his undoing. For Romulus saw not fear in Remus's eyes, but weakness, so he pushed his brother forward. "Fight," he said, "or get out of the way." Remus blanched, but there was no escape. He lunged, his dagger flashing in the sun. But Tarpius was ready. He parried the blow and twisted. His dagger dug deep into Romulus's shoulder, but the pain made Romulus stronger. He roared like a wounded animal and struck back. Tarpius stumbled, surprised by the ferocity of the attack. That was all the opening Romulus needed. He rushed forward, slammed his dagger into the ground, and pulled. Tarpius pitched forward, collapsing onto the rocks below the Lupercal. He lay still. The brothers stared at him, chests heaving. "And then run," gasped Romulus. "He might still live." But Remus didn't move. In that moment, he realized that he wasn't scared of dying, only of living without honor. He turned to his brother, whose eyes blazed with triumph. The sight twisted something inside Remus, some deep, primal instinct that made a wolf whimper and slink away, ashamed. For Romulus and Remus, their lives had been full of adventure. A new threat rises. The celebrations continued for days, but soon order had to be restored. The kingship Romulus led the charge. He fought like a lion, tearing his enemies limb from limb, and sending their souls to the underworld. But for now, let's return to the story. The first twin the next morning, Romulus awoke to cheers. Meanwhile, Romulus had returned from his quest. bringing with him not a queen, but a princess, someone who would become the most important woman in Roman history. The death of a king is a turning point in history. It can change the course of a kingdom, a dynasty. Even empires fall with the passing of a great leader. Yet most people forget that Rome was once just a small settlement of huts along the Tiber River, after the she-wolf suckled them and the shepherds raised them. Romulus and Remus roamed the hills around the Tiber River. Remus looked to Aventine, broader, more open, the hill he climbed first as a child. But what happened to Rome? Well, the legend goes that Romulus went on to rule the growing city of Rome for 36 years. Whether you're talking about kings or peasants, ambition is a double-edged sword. Sure, Romulus achieved his goals and founded a dynasty. But if he never killed Remus, maybe he could have ruled alongside his brother. Instead, he chose to kill his brother, and in doing so, changed the course of history forever. What do you guys think? Why do you think Romulus killed Remus? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, thank you to our supporters. Special shout out to John D. Without you guys, this series would not be possible. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. And if you haven't already, stay tuned for more content. Under his reign, Rome became an independent Italian city-state, went to war with its neighbors, and expanded its territory. Eventually, he met his end in a battle against the neighboring Etruscans, getting gored in the thigh by a bull's horn. Now the Romans took control of the Italian peninsula, but eventually the empire fell, though this has nothing to do with the death of Romulus. The traditional date of Rome's founding is traditionally set at 753 BCE, but recent archaeological evidence suggests that Rome was founded somewhere between 10th and 9th centuries BCE. However, there is very little physical evidence of Rome's legendary founders. In fact, the earliest written accounts of Rome's founding we have come from Dionysius of Halicarnassus, who wrote it in his book called The Roman Antiquities, written around 2,000 years ago. Other accounts from Greek and Roman historians about the origins of Rome are mostly silent about the role of Romulus and Remus, though the story of Romulus and Remus might be nothing more than a myth. The story reflects important aspects of Roman identity in the Archaic period, such as Rome's humble beginnings as a small settlement and its early association with the she-wolf, which later became Rome's symbol. They argued, not loudly, but deeply, and when they could not decide, they turned to the gods. A sign in the sky, they agreed to watch the sky. Each would wait atop his chosen hill, watching for a sign. Whoever received the greatest omen would be king. Remus saw 6 vultures. Romulus soon after saw 12. Remus claimed victory for being first. Romulus claimed the gods had spoken through numbers. And then the laughter stopped, the first sharp word. The first heavy silence, 2 brothers, once one soul. Now drifting apart, the first blood Romulus began building a wall around Palatine Hill, a simple boundary, a symbol of his city to be. Remus came, mocking him, leapt over the small wall. "Is this your mighty kingdom?" he laughed. "Will these stones keep out the wind?" No one knows what came next. Some say it was a fight. Others say Romulus struck without thinking. But when the dust settled, Remus lay still. Romulus stood over him, heart racing, hand trembling, and the silence returned. The city rises. Romulus buried his brother beneath the hill, not as an enemy, but as blood. He raised a city of stone and sorrow, named it Rome after himself, after fate, after the price he had paid. The gates were open to all. Runaways, exiles, orphans, and wanderers came. From grief grew greatness. They chased rabbits, wrestled, and made forts out of sticks and stones. It was during one of these games that they decided to make their mark on the world. They would build a city. They had seen how crowded and noisy and unpleasant the settlements around the Tiber were. In their minds, The only way to improve their lives was to build a place of their own. As they made their way back home, discussing the details of their future city, they came across a grove of fig trees near a river bend. "Here," said Romulus, "we will build our city here. We will name it after our mother, Rhea Silvia." "But this is where we played as boys," Remus protested, "where we ran from the others and where we hid the treasure we found. This is too sad a place to build a city." "Sadness is for the weak," Romulus scoffed. "A place of sadness can become a place of strength. A place of loss can become a place of remembrance." Remus pondered his brother's words and knew he wouldn't be persuaded. So the twins continued walking towards the Tiber until they reached a cave hidden amongst some rocks. "This is where the she-wolf sheltered us," Remus pointed out. "And we were saved from death by a shepherd and his wife. Should we build here?" Romulus looked into the dark opening. "Too dangerous," he said. "One can never feel safe inside a cave." Remus nodded slowly, knowing his brother was right. Finally, as the sun was setting, the brothers came across a flat piece of land on a low hill, overlooking the Tiber Valley. On one side was the Omo River. On the other was a dense forest called the Janiculum. To the north was a marshland called the Corniculum. The twins sat down on top of the hill. "Let us build a city," Romulus said softly. "A city like no other. A place for those cast aside, a new beginning." Remus smiled at his brother. "Yes, let us build a city together." The dream was shared, but the vision was not. And like many cities across the world, Rome was founded by two brothers. Well, actually, technically, the traditional story says that Rome was founded by twin brothers named Romulus and Remus, but I assure you that this story doesn't end well for one of them. Hello, and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to look at the death of Remus, co-founder of Rome. If you enjoy stories like this, stay tuned for more. Sometimes a ruler is so powerful, so integral to their state's identity, that their demise ushers in an age of decline. You think of the HRE after the death of Charles the Great, or the Byzantine Empire after the passing of Emperor Leo III, the Isaurian. But every so often, a monarch's death pushes their kingdom forward. The accession of Henry V to the English throne, or Peter the Great to the Russian throne, are good examples of this. In fact, there are few deaths in human history which have been as consequential as the passing of Augustus the Strong. That joke was too easy, but no one would have blamed you if you didn't get it. Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled program. In the modern era, we tend to view Rome as an ancient city of heroes, emperors, and gods. They had tasted power, but more than that, they had touched destiny. Romulus looked to Palatine Hill, strong, proud, his birthplace. Now, obviously, this story is quite famous, partially thanks to the Disney movie about it that I wholeheartedly endorse. I find the story of Romulus and Remus interesting because the death of Remus is a cautionary tale of fratricidal ambition. In the beginning, there was only one Rome. You might know it as the Roman Empire, a sprawling kingdom that once encompassed most of Europe, North Africa, and parts of the Middle East, because everyone knows the story of Romulus killing his twin brother Remus after the two of them founded the city. But what happened after that? Who were the leaders that came after Romulus? How did they shape the early Roman state? If you're ready to learn about the beginnings of the Roman Empire and meet the kings who laid its foundations, then let's get into it. Regardless, what matters is how he led. Unlike Romulus, Numa found ways to connect with the people beyond war. Rumor has it that she emerged from a spring deep within the Roman woods. When he ascended to the throne, Rome was buzzing with potential, much like a hive of bees stored in each citizen's heart. So Tullius set to work. His hands were rough from years of honest labor, calloused yet steady, ready to mold Rome into a city that reached for the sun. He understood the value of community, the importance of honoring their traditions, and the necessity for balance. In his zeal for growth and power, he sometimes overlooked the quiet corners of his kingdom. The previous kings had laid strong foundations, but the people now craved a leader who could guide them through the complexities of their growing city. Marcus, known as Ancus Marcius, possessed a rare blend of strength and sensitivity, a quality that would come to define his legacy as the fourth king of Rome. There were times when the pleas of ordinary citizens were drowned out by the clamor of ambition. Day after day, Ancus and his team of builders toiled under the hot Roman sun, laying stone upon stone. Ancus showed Rome that true strength lay not in brute force or unbridled ambition, but in service to others. We've got lots of historical tales to tell, from epic empires to fascinating figures. You don't want to miss any of them. He didn't just build walls to keep invaders out, but a bridge to bring his people together. He didn't just organize markets for profit, but to ensure no one went hungry. His legacy wasn't just about expanding Rome's borders or amassing greater wealth, but about making life better for every single citizen. When the bridge was finally completed, it wasn't just a triumph for engineering, but a triumph for the human spirit. The people of Rome flocked to the bridge, marveling at its grandeur while secretly marveling at their king's foresight. The relentless pursuit of more, the ceaseless drive for expansion, and the constant pressure to excel took a toll on the hearts and minds of his people. While Rome flourished under Tullus, his reign also planted the seeds of discontent, a reminder that even the boldest progress must always walk hand in hand with wisdom and compassion. There were times when he too found solace in the quieter moments, a walk along the Appian Way at dusk, a conversation with a wise elder, or the simple pleasure of a meal shared with friends. But these moments were rare. Tullus was a whirlwind of energy, forever seeking new ways to improve, expand, and strengthen Rome. He wasn't a man who issued commands from afar, but someone who walked among his people, listening to their concerns, sharing their joys, and feeling their pain. He organized the markets, ensuring that food was distributed fairly, that prices were reasonable, and that no one went hungry. He also strengthened the defenses of the city, building the Servian walls that would protect Rome for centuries. With flowing white hair and eyes that sparkled with ancient wisdom, she became Numa's confidant, guiding him with cryptic advice under the silver glow of the moon. He was a builder of bridges, quite literally. One day, as he strolled along the Tiber River, he noticed how it divided rather than united his people. With a heavy heart, he vowed to change that. And so he set about building a bridge that would not just connect the two sides of the river, but also serve as a symbol of unity for all Romans. He saw their strengths, their skills, and their dreams. He wanted Rome to grow, to flourish, to become a powerhouse among the Italian city-states. But he didn't believe in idling by the Tiber dreaming of glory. No, Tullus believed in rolling up your sleeves and seizing the day. He challenged the young men of Rome to push past their limits, to excel in every endeavor, and to make the most of their talents. The city bustled with activity. Men trained in the arts of war, merchants expanded trade networks, and artisans perfected their crafts. Their bond remains a whisper in history, a hint of magic in a world of men. He established customs that honored the natural world, showing reverence to the rivers, the earth, and the stars above. It was during his reign that Rome truly began to feel like a home, a place where people could lay down their burdens and be more than just survivors. And although it fell long ago, its influence still echoes today. Its language is a root of many modern tongues. Its laws inspired revolutions, and its art and architecture still inspires awe. His reign was a testament to peaceful progress, shaping Rome into a beacon of prosperity and unity. But his leadership wasn't born of ambition or conquest. Numa took the crown not because he sought power, but because he saw Rome's potential for greatness. He didn't want to rule with iron fists or impose his will through force. Instead, His approach was rooted in understanding the hearts and minds of his people. Under his guidance, Rome thrived, not through conquest, but through harmony. He marked the seasons with festivals, celebrated the cycles of nature, and reminded his people that true strength begins in stillness. They learned to honor the quiet moments, to find wisdom in solitude, and to face their challenges with unwavering calm. But the empire's vastness is easy to take for granted. It's hard to remember that it started small, that it was once a fledgling city struggling to find its footing in an uncertain world. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's start at the very first day of Rome, when Remus was no longer beside him. Romulus stood quietly atop the hill. He welcomed those without a home, those seeking peace and purpose. But he also knew a city needed balance, not just courage, but calm. He looked out over the settlement, unsure of what the future would bring, but determined to do what was right. When Romulus left, in silence wrapped in legend, the people looked up and asked, "Who will guide us next?" From the crowd, a tall young man stepped forward. He radiated warmth, and his eyes held the wisdom of the ages. This was Numa Pompilius, the second king of Rome. He understood the needs of a growing city, the balance between order and freedom. But how exactly did Numa become king? Historians debate whether his ascension was peaceful or shrouded in more intrigue. Some stories tell of a secret ally of Numa, a mysterious woman known as Egeria. Tullus the Bold, however, dismissed such whispers. He believed in progress through effort and energy, in the power of ambition and drive. Like a general surveying his troops, Tullus observed his people. Yet amidst all this drive, Tullus never forgot the lessons of his predecessors. However, as Rome grew, as its borders expanded and its influence spread, Tullius missed something. Ancus, the son of Tarquin, rose to power at a time when Rome was yearning for stability and unity. From the moment he took the crown, Ancus set about understanding the needs of his people. Yet Ancus was more than just a builder of walls and organizer of markets. His vision was a structure of arches, sturdy yet elegant, strong enough to withstand the test of time, and beautiful enough to inspire awe. But perhaps most importantly, and that's where we'll end this episode. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, consider supporting us. Rome wasn't built in a day, so they say. And though there are 28 more hours left in this week's time frame, it also took many years for Rome to go from this to this. Romulus and Remus, raised by a she-wolf, they became the first kings of the city of Rome. Their descendants would rule for 6 generations. That's over 200 years of kingship. But now it's the year 753 BC, and there are no more heirs to the throne. He hosted lavish parties and banquets, inviting 8 men of equal status to dine with him. He showed them a possibility for their city, a glimpse of what it could become. The son of a minor king from a neighboring city-state, he was sent away as a young boy destined to die. But a gentle glow seemed to follow him, and he was taken in by shepherds who raised him as one of their own. And though he grew up outside of the city, it didn't take long for his talents to shine through. The question was, could Rome without Tarquinius continue to dream? He was careful to choose men of different backgrounds and walks of life so that all Romans could see themselves represented in the kingdom's court. He passed by 2 obelisks decorated with scenes of his most famous building projects. There were rumblings about the size of his army and complaints about the high taxes required to support it. And soon he would pass the throne to someone who wouldn't listen the same way he did. And he passed by the temple he built to honor the traditional founders of Rome, Romulus and Remus, reminding everyone that Rome was built on the foundation of family. He was handsome and charming, but also arrogant and cruel. He built wonders for Rome, including Rome's first sewer system, but also punished those who criticized him. He wanted everyone to think I too could be invited to the king's table. The story goes that when they met together to decide what to do next, one man spoke up and said, "What if we choose?" And the people echoed, "What if we choose together?" But over time, the Republic grew, becoming a beacon of opportunity. The people loved having kings, but they felt they had lost their voice. They chose to elect leaders to represent them. They chose to write down their laws so everyone could see them. They chose to be a part of something greater than themselves, united in purpose, bound together by memory and hope. And they were right. If you enjoyed this episode, check out our World War II series to see how the ruins of ancient Rome played a part in the battle between good and evil. Thanks for coming along on this journey through history. It was here in this temple that he kept the statues of the first kings of Rome, including the one of Romulus and Remus, gifted to him by his father-in-law, the one that symbolized the foundation of their city. But he removed Servius from the group and placed himself front and center. He reorganized Rome's government, setting up the city's first council. And he continued to build, creating new neighborhoods and walls of defense. They couldn't always see the bigger picture the way he did, and sometimes they needed reminders. But what the people loved best was the way he listened to every voice, the way he cared for the common folk, the way he wrapped the city in care and protection. He forgot that good government meant listening to every voice. And because of that, the people eventually rose up against him and ended his bloodline, ending the era of kings in Rome. And in the middle of the chariot, a giant statue of himself, Tarquinius Superbus, wearing a crown, holding a scepter, looking down at the people he ruled. But he also knew that the people had other deities they honored too. So instead of trying to convince them to worship just Minerva, he built a great temple to her rivals, the goddesses of wisdom, and placed it beside the Tiber River. In fact, his court was so inclusive that even foreigners could be invited. And this openness was seen as a model of Roman culture at its best. He was the first king of Rome to open a temple to all the gods, a doxopatrion, where he held annual festivals honoring all of them together. His approach to religion was much like his approach to governing. He carefully considered every side and tried to find a way to honor all of them equally. And the ruling king, Tarquinius Priscus, known as Tarquinius the Dreamer, had bigger plans for Rome than being an average city. So let's set our history stones and get to work, because this is Rome in 753 BCE and you rewatching this channel. In the beginning, there was a pair of twins. This was a large oval-shaped area surrounded by stands of tiered seats, able to hold up to 150,000 spectators. It might have started out as a racetrack for chariots, but quickly became the place for Rome's most popular public events. As the crowds gathered here to watch athletic competitions or races or mock battles between armies, they were reminded of everything Tarquinius had done to make Rome a grander place, because throughout the city were monuments to his reign. Tarquinius the Dreamer had arrived in Rome from afar, supposedly bringing with him the skills he learned in distant lands. Most importantly, he had ideas for how Rome could be more than a collection of hills and a river. He developed building projects that would bring people together. He made places for celebrating games and festivals, places where music and voices filled the air, laughter echoed, and bonfires crackled at night. He transformed the old citadel of the kings into a beautiful palace and built around it a formal park with groves and gardens. But his greatest project would be the Circus Maximus. But some believed the biggest monument was Tarquinius himself. So while many remembered Tarquinius the Dreamer for all he had built, others remembered him for his vision of Rome. The next king, Servius Tullius, certainly did. He began life as a nobody. He married a princess, then used her influence to return to the city and help establish order after a period of civil war. Servius was known as Servius the Listener, and he listened not only to the people, but to the gods. For example, he knew that Rome's patron deity, The goddess of the state, Minerva, was often invoked before any important project. Still, Servius the Listener was a king, and the people's loyalty was ultimately to the crown. And so when the king walked through the forum, he passed by a bronze statue of himself, dressed not as a king, but as a commoner. But as Servius neared the end of his life, there were signs that not everyone shared his vision for Rome. The final king, Tarquinius Superbus, known as Tarquinius the Proud, was Servius's son-in-law, a man with a powerful wife and an even greater sense of entitlement. His greatest building project would be the Temple of the Divine Kings, a massive structure to glorify the line of kings that ruled Rome. In the center of the temple, he commissioned a bronze chariot drawn by 4 horses, each horse representing one of the 4 sections of Rome's social hierarchy. But many felt that he looked down on them just a little too much. Tarquinius the Proud might have been wise in design, but he was distant in heart. He ignored the needs of the people. It was the beginning of a new era, a time when Rome would step into the unknown, unsure of what lay ahead, but excited for the journey. They chose to form a republic where power flowed from the people. Rome's experiment didn't always work. There were times of civil war and civil unrest. And today, when wind moves through the ancient stone, we remember the ones who led before us, not as rulers, but as the first dreamers of Rome. Hey there.